Namaskar and welcome to this exciting new episode of Sattology Debunking Mythology. And Sat means truth, Logos means study or science, Sattology means the science of truth, study of truth, which is a true antonym of mythology. Myth is a Sanskrit dhatu, which means a fake lie, imagination, from which the words come mithya, mithyachar, other words also come, mytho, abhipetya, all kinds of words have come from there. So mythology means a study or science of fake, lie, or imagination. We should never use the word mythology for Vedic histories such as Ramayana and Mahabharata. Obviously, you must actually find the reference, you must research the reference, and then it becomes mythology. Before that, it remains mythology. You have to prove it truth. So today we have very, very special guests talking on the same topic. The first part got released much earlier. In between, we all know that during pandemic times, we all are going through a tough time everywhere in the world. And so now we are doing the second part today. Now, before we start off, let me introduce you. She has done an excellent research. Her tweets are read thousands of times, and some important people get disturbed by those tweets. That is a good thing nowadays, because the people who are they have to produce an evidence first, and so she demands proof, which is very good. I also demand proof, but nobody listens to me. So thank you so much for joining. So without delay, let us welcome Shri Rupa Bhaty.
Namaste, Aditya ji. Namaste.
Namaste, Rupa ji. So, Rupa ji, before we start off, and you can share the presentation, how is the journey of Sattology versus mythology? Like how the seeking after truth, what is the journey? What is the experience in that journey?
This is something fantastic happening now because of your platform. You've taken so much of efforts to bring all these people from different genre. They are coming here and they're discussing with you. And definitely the satya from that mythologies are coming up and surfacing in a better manner. So the dialogue is very much necessary, and that is what you're doing. And we are very grateful for this venture of yours. And this is kind of an platform there. Something very eye-opening things are also happening. People are getting to know various researchers also. It's not that every researcher is doing their uh, non-Vitanda kind of a part, but definitely people can understand by listening to all these. So your journey and my journey and everyone's journey on this platform is exhaustive as well as it is very beneficiary for all. I hope people will get more and more information and they will be able to like decide uh, which side is good and which side is having better theories, better outcomes, better results. That is much more necessary. The dialogue is very much necessary these days. So that is what you're doing exactly.
Yeah, no, the truth and the untruth has is not just black and white. It can be gray also. You know,
Yeah,
because there are a lot of things, a lot of factors come into play. And if anyone is looking for black and white answers that this is right and this is wrong and this is the boundary of right and wrong, it's very difficult in these situations because you're dealing with somebody's record, like you're dealing with Vyasdev's record, you're dealing with Valmiki's record. Sometimes we do not understand those things. Those things have changed, times have changed, and sometimes we do not understand. So we cannot be always right, but at the same time, we can be sure that it is in this direction. Yeah, am I
direction.
right?
Definitely. Yeah, and your platform is giving that direction actually. So people are now becoming aware of at least many scriptures. Like one of my co-researchers, he always says that who would like to read Brahmanas? But that is the thing I'm kind of doing, which has been not touched upon by many of them. And for that matter, many Western researchers got involved into it, and they kind of dated it in a very loose manner, in a very biblical manner, I should say. Everything should be towards 4000 BC and nothing should go beyond that. So that is a kind of thing was happening. So they created a new myth, in fact, the new myth
Right.
of understanding few words like Godhuma, for say Uttarayana, and all these things. They started to come up with a new ideologies, a new references, created references, axiomatic, I should say. And in that manner, they have come up with the idea that nothing happened before 4000 BC. So that is the idea, completely got with the listeners, and that was imparted to us also. And somehow we also believed it until recently when we started reading for ourselves. Like first question that came into my mind, that if Ramayana is going for 12,000 BCE with the two pole star conditions, then what about the Rig Veda? What about the Brahmanas? Are they pointing out to something else? So that inquisitiveness should be there, that should be inculcated, of course, so that we create a framework later how to search for the truth. So this is the first beginning, how to know about the knowable thing, about the knowledge which is already there by one other knower who has created this knowledge database for us. So in today's time, we are also a knower. We are trying to get that knowable thing of that knowledge which is presented to us.
And also there is a, like, we are doing derived research, you're not doing direct research. Now,
Exactly.
now, derived research means that we are taking the shloka of Mahabharata, Valmiki, any of the Veda texts,
Right.
and it's a philosophical speculation. We are not trying to go blind, like I close my eyes and start imagining things. We are not doing that. That's how
Exactly.
you create Greek history and Roman history, when you start imagining things. But
Exactly.
in our history, we are actually reading a text. We can misinterpret it. We can create a wrong understanding. So that is all, excused, because we are not trying to twist the words. We're not trying to change the words. If if
Exactly.
if my poor understanding and my poor research leads me to something and somebody refutes me, we are happy to change. There's no problem there. But if somebody
Exactly.
doesn't come back to challenge you without evidence and just says you're wrong, that statement has no value, isn't it?
Exactly.
It
Exactly.
doesn't stand the test of time. That just because you're wrong. I say, prove me how am I wrong. If Vyasdev says this is what I understand. If Vyasdev says the same thing, what do you understand? Just answer me.
Right.
And that's where you can have a discussion. So without delay, let's move on, and you can share your slides and we can start the discussion here.
Yeah, sure, sure. Before that, I would add, before sharing this, and you pointed out a very nice thing, that we have space. We all have space uh, to tell our side of story.
Right.
है ना? मेरी स्टोरी कुछ और हो सकती है,
Right.
दूसरे रिसर्चर की कुछ और हो सकती है,
Yeah.
but there is always a space.
Yeah.
And Sri Vienja says that this is one type of viroda, the kind of debate what happens na, in Navya Nyaya language. When the debate happens, there are two kind of debates. One he says is Saha Anavasthana Virodha. So Saha Anavasthan Virod means you are totally wrong and you should be uh, kept away. And whatever I say is right.
That's the
And the
Abrahamic
other,
debate.
yeah, Abrahamic kind of.
Yeah.
And the other kind of the thing which was always in our Indian system, that was Navya Mimamsa, Purva Mimamsa also, Uttama Mimamsa also. That is Malla Viroda. And Malla Virod means that uh, I agree to disagree, like uh, that X is not Y and Y is not X. it is something like a mathematical thing, but I don't agree with your hypothesis. You don't agree with my hypothesis, but we keep apart our own, both of our hypotheses, and let the audience then decide. So it is a Malla Virodha. So that is a very beautiful thing he had said, and that has etched my mind that Indian tradition, Indian knowledge system always had that space for everyone to speak their mind. And there they can debate in a very proper manner with all those pratyaksha pramana, anumana, agama pramana. And all with all these things, if properly presented, then one can come to a conclusion. So that is what a beautiful thing
And
Indian system
also,
has.
there is another point. What do you reach after the conclusion? Then the swadhyay begins. You don't
Exactly.
have, you're not stopping there. It's a journey.
It's a great
Swadhyay has to go on. I mean, you don't have to leave mantra japa. You don't have to give dana tapa. Krishna says that dana tapa yagya should not be given up even by pavarani manishana. Like it purifies even the intelligent people. Just knowledge is not the king. Swadhyay is the king. Which is,
exactly.
don't forget that. Otherwise, arrogance will come in and all types of bad things will come in, which you oppose in the first place very much. So, yeah, please
Yeah,
continue. Please continue.
please. So just share this. So last time we were here. Okay. Yeah, play mode. Let me take to this. Yeah. So there was a time lapse, so I just forgot how to do all these. Um, so last time I was speaking about the myth and mythology, and I explained. I'm trying to come up with the last time's last slide, where I showed how the factual history got interfused with the unexamined assumption. And that unexamined assumption remained as it is for thousands of years. Just because Augusta got eloped from those latitudes, and when it was coming back to those latitudes, so it was taking a lot of time. And that is why that got into a mythical kind of story. And that mythical kind of story got some philosophical underpinnings, and suddenly it came to the ethnopsychology also, and this myth completely became a folklore, which was a scientific history. I would say it was a scientific history. Augusta is crossing Vindhya, but suddenly we see that it completely became a folklore, a folk tale, fable, whatever we can say uh, in synonymous way. So, what we found that all the myths or stories are not uh, completely untrue in Puranas or Itihasas, and these need a special care to be looked into. And for that matter, we try to understand how to create a framework, because already in archaeoastronomy we find that there's so much of problem of understanding the simple verses. People say no moon analogies and something vasant analogy. These can be just figment of imagination of a poet. So they forget that in Itihasa or in any of the text what we are trying to read, something like let us say Raghuvansham or something like beautiful poetry Meghadutam, a poet can always go into his imaginative world, and he can create a Vasanta Ritu in Sharad, he can create Varsha Ritu in Grishma, uh, that kind of poetical license a poet has, and he can always do this. But when we see towards the itihasas, it becomes very necessary not only for these myths, what are being retold there. It always surfaces in between when some dialogue between Ram and Sita is going on, or with Arjun and Bhim and all going on. Suddenly Nahusha comes between. Suddenly uh, Agastya, Vindhya lore comes in between. So these lores, or Trishanku comes in between. So these are something to be examined, because these are unexamined assumptions. So these needs examination. Apart from that, when we look into the text of Itihasa, when the Vasant is coming continuously for say 10 to 12 of the verses, and suddenly one verse comes with the Sharad. So your mind will be uh, like getting confused why a poet would like to write everything happening in Vasant, and suddenly he is turning into Sharad. So apparently it appears that poet is not doing, but when the written system came into being, it was all oral tradition. The itihasas also came to us as oral traditions only. It was not written. So when a writer in say 500 CE or 200 BCE, he is writing and with the script. Now the Brahmi script is there, the other scripts are there, and when he's writing and he's trying to understand that why Rama should be like born in Sharad, he should be born in Vasant only, and likewise the problem gets created. So he will write something else there, although Sharadi moon is going on and all those things are coming up with the 10 to 20 of the verses, and suddenly one verse is going to Vasant, towards Vasant, that Rama was born in Chaitra in Vasanta season. So these kind of things come up, and that time researchers like us begin to uh, understand, fail. In fact, we fail to understand why this is happening so. So when an itihasa is being written, uh, that cannot be a, first thing we should understand, that cannot be a figment of imagination. So he is writing with the hope that he is endorsing all those activities that was going on at that point of time. Because Valmiki's ashram is having Sita, and Sita is now delivering all these information to Valmiki, as it appears to me, and that is how the whole thing is getting formulated. So that is not a figment of imagination that Vasant is happening and suddenly there is a Sharad, or Sharad is happening, suddenly there is a Vasant. There has to be some reason behind that. So one reason can be, definitely, is there some problem with the northern or southern hemisphere? The other reason can be, is it an interpolation because the one who was writing during recent times is experiencing it in Vasant and it was not happening in Sharad. So there are certain things that we need to look into. So for that matter, I will again go back into how to create the framework and methodology to understand all these situations. So the poet, or should we say the itihasakara? I should not say the poet, because as I use it poet for Valmiki or Vyasa, these will become a piece of poetry. So I would say they are itihasakara, and they are writing something which they have heard as a Shruti and Smritis, and which they are visually observing, and then they are writing. So uh, the seasons, in my opinion, the seasons and the geography, the geology, and whatever sciences, botany, and botanical and paleobotany and everything has to be considered very gravely and seriously, so that we can come to some kind of a conclusion what was happening at what point of time. So for that matter, I will just go ahead with one of this slide where would like to show a very interesting data. So last time we already saw that astral myth, that was Parashar Tantra's Agastya Vindyalore, which is present in Ramayana also, Mahabharata also. And there is an anthropogonic myth about Agastya, that he was a dwarf. And again, there is one more information with the help of ethnographic myth coming up, that he was a thumb size uh, sage, a small thumb sized sage. So now, if we see to the towards Agastya Vindyalore, so something very interesting that we understand here is that what can be a thumb? So in astronomy, we use certain fingers of hand and also hand to get a view of few degrees in the sky. So how many degrees that star is away from this star, we can get away. We can get hold of that information with the visual observation. So you can see here that the little finger has 1 degrees of measurement. If you pull up your 3 fingers, it is almost 5 degrees. It makes almost 5 degrees. And now, if you take up a thumb in this fashion or in this fashion, either vertical or horizontal, with the horizontal, you can make it out that it must be 2 degrees. With the horizontal, you can always make up it is almost 5 degrees or 4 degrees, like that. It varies with person to person, and that has to be like properly judged with the help of other people's measurements also. So what do we understand with this? Now, this is completely an anthropogenic myth about his height, about being a dwarf, and that has been remembered in all the texts about Agastya. So suddenly, everything and the fog clears. That okay, supposingly his thumb size, so it can be showing 5 degrees above horizon or 2 degrees above horizon. So we get a clear picture and completely a truthful nature of Agastya emerges, because before this information of Parashar Tantra, we always assumed Agastya to be a physical uh, and mortal being. So that is what has become a folk tale. Agastya was crossing Vindhya, the physical Agastya was crossing Vindhya at that time. And thus, dwarf was also very much necessarily a physical Agastya. So you will see that the Murtikaras, the Shilpa Shastra, it creates the Agastya's Murti in a dwarf form. So that is our ethnographic memory that comes to picture, and this is how we can decipher things. So now we see that there are certain frameworks that we can work upon and how to find the truth. Now, I'm not giving a complete picture of what framework it should be, but I'm kind of giving that these kind of myths get deciphered when certain evidence come in between. So for now, we don't have any evidence for Trishanku coming in. Nahusha being for 10,000 years he was hanging upside down as a snake, and suddenly Bhima meets Nahusha. So this myth is not getting corroborated, because we don't know at what portion of the sky Nahusha is there, or at what portion of sky Trishanku could be there, and where the Vishwamitra creates a new heaven for Trishanku, and all these facts. Uh, but they are just a myth, because we don't know those stars. we are not able to recognize those stars right now. So until we get some more information regarding this, it is very difficult. It can be only a conjecture and assumption, and it will remain uh, as an uh, unexamined assumption, and it will then remain as a myth for a long time. So there is always a hint that it is a scientific truth, but where to locate it, how to conduce to some kind of a conclusion that this is not a myth, this is not just a mythology. But the best thing is that this mythology is being kept in India as it is. So the future generations, when they come up with more translations of many other texts which are not yet being translated and are being kept as in the Tamrapatris only. So once they get translated and once they get into the mainstream net, uh, then we will be having access to those texts, and probably we can find more truths about this. So this is how I try to approach towards myth. It is very difficult to because there is always a thin line between what is true and what is untrue, and that thin line has to be like erased to find out the scientific history in that. So I will go to the next slide and just trying to show you that someone was a knower in that mythology, the one who has received that. So he was the first knower who is verbalizing the contents, and now he is writing and creating a database for us. So why he is doing so? The one thing. The second thing, whatever comes to us is in the unaltered way or as an altered knowledge. And this has come to us as an oral tradition, which has many descriptive facets to it. And we can go into those epoch of time of those times, and we can visualize how these people were reacting, or these people, the Rigvedic people, or the Ramayana time people, or the Mahabharata time people, how they were reacting with each other, how they were communicating with each other, uh, what kind of environment they had around themselves. So these all things can be very easily uh, put into a framework, and then we can deduce when it was happening and how it was happening, and what kind of a result was that due to those happenings, and that we can come up with. So the unaltered information is basically, I would say that Rig Veda has this unaltered thing. Puranas may get altered because there is no such dignified thing attached to it, like if you do something and you will be hurt, something like that. That fear factor is not there with the other things like Itihasas and Puranas. What they feel they can do, like Parmeshwar was also doing for the Aryabhatiya. He was changing few of the original verse of Aryabhata with his own assumptions. So there was nothing like Aryabhata said that, oh, if you do that, this will be like a punishable offense or something like that. But the Apurusha Tattva, which got attached to Rigved, so we have many of the things as it is, and we don't see there is any editings done to those texts. So whatever the Rishi saw, it was conceived in by him, and it was given to us as it is. And it has been a culture and tradition of Indians to have kept it as it is without any alteration. So one very interesting thing comes up in the Vedic text, that is the one of the Tattriya Samhita, one of the extended text of Vedas, where it is mentioned that Daksha had 33, Prajapati had 33 daughters. and they all were married to moon. The same thing comes in the Purana and Mahabharata also, that the moon had 27 daughters and they all were married to moon. So this kind of alteration and editing can be seen, uh, not because somebody came up with the figment of imagination, but it was deduced due to the huge time lapse and minute observation near ecliptic. We don't know how much time lapse, but it does show that there was an evolution in these kind of texts also. So it is not that the Taittiriya Samhita was written at some point of time and after that it was not at all edited. So that addition, alteration were going on in Brahmanas. Somewhere Rig Veda ascertains that there should not be any more addition after a point of time. So at some point of time, we will discuss that also in future. So the many descriptive facilities that come up that facilitates us to understand what Rig Veda is. So there Rig Veda says about Ashna. So that gives a period of time at what point of time it could have been written and started writing from that early, and it came to so many generations of so many sages of uh, different gotras, I should say, different sects, probably not sects exactly, but different gotras, probably that would be right word. So in Rigveda it comes Ashna. Ashna is a stone, and stone is being used for attacking the enemy or the predators or something like that. Something used in the warfare, which is very much can be seen in Rigveda. Or Ardri or Drishad. These are all the names of stone implements. Before all these kind of stone implements were used, some two stones were used for the soma extraction also. So very easily one can see that much of the Paleolithic time is getting reflected in that. And Paleolithic time is a huge span of time, and we don't know from which portion it started appearing. So overall, to understand Vedas, Brahmanas, Aranyakas, Itihasas, we need a certain kind of a framework, a methodology, so that we can approach to higher truth, to that kind of a truth which clarifies the whole fog which is there on our Indic texts. So that is very much required at this point of time. Uh, and for that matter, in the next episode, we will be taking that how this can be done. Like I will try for a month to understand how these myths can be approached with better clarity, and how to place them and where to place these myths from the itihasas, from the Rig Veda. Uh, for example, Indra Vrittasur. So that is the most interesting and the most earliest myth that human minds have created, and that was their ability to create with few words, and how they have created a beautiful imagery of as Meghantu says, the Vrittasur is not Vritta is nothing but a cloud. So how this is related to the seasons, and what kind of a stone before the cave is being removed, which cattles are coming out, why panis were used, and what is all about this. So there are two layers, like one cosmology, one astronomy. They both come into play in the uh, same kind of a myth, which is repeatedly given in many mandalas, in many different suktas in Rig Veda. So human minds from the Paleolithic time, as I said, the Ashna, which is used for attacking, the Ardri, the Drishad, and that is the Drishadvati name also for because of the stone implements were created there in Son Valley and in Drishadvati region between between the Drishadvati and Saraswati river, and why that place becomes a Brahmavarta, the first place, the first place name, why it emerges like that, how it becomes a Kurukshetra. So we will sometimes discuss it in the later episodes. But for that matter, to reach to all these myths, it is very much required to have a framework or methodology to understand how to reach to that truth. Because many of them say that Rig Veda is just 1900s BCE and it cannot be uh, earlier to that. But we see the sophistication of tools and technology. The turbans, I think Mahabharat mentions the red color turban. So the colors, the turbans, the cloth, many things will come into picture, and we require to frame a methodology to understand all these scriptures with a new lens, in fact, and that is what is the times requiring actually. These times require such kind of studies from all the sciences to get to understand these scriptures in more better way, not just astronomy, but the other things can also be studied. And if those theories about the astronomy is correct, the other things also will fall in place. So that is what my humble request to all the researchers around the world who are doing the Indic researches. They need to be seen from many angles. So one more I would like to take now the ethnographic as well as the places. Now the places emerge, the tirthas emerge. So I will take one of the example uh, before we go into framing methodology. So there is a Vishnu Pada Tirtha, that is one of the name of Ganga also, Vishnu Padi. It comes from Vishnu Pada Tirtha name. Since this Tirtha was very near to uh, Ganges, very near to Ganga. So that is why it got this name also. But we know that Vishnu Pada Tirtha is the name of Gaya, and Gaya comes from the word Gaya, which means a house, a dwelling. So now we require to understand how old this memory can be. So, with the help of two or three incidents, uh, I come to the conclusion that Vishnupada is the place from where the earth, the sun takes trope towards south. That is the Dakshinayan begins. And I've already said that Dakshinayan and Uttarayan word, these words came in Surya Siddhanta first. So these words are absent, uh, completely absent in other earlier works like Brahmanas, Veda, Aranyakas. The Uttarayan and Dakshinayan word doesn't appear there. The first time, even in Vedang Jyotish, Uttarayan and Dakshinayan words are not there. There Udagayan and Dakshinati words are there. So what we see is that there is a human memory about a place, Vishnupada Tirtha, from where the sun takes trope towards south. But when was it happened? Because the Gaya's latitude is 24.7 degrees. So that much of obliquity, the Earth's obliquity or the tilt of Earth should be that much uh, with the North Pole that it makes 24.7 degrees. And you will be astonished that this was not happening in the recent times. If you go to the obliquity graph, then you will find that it was happening way back in around, say, uh, 40 to 50,000 years ago. So it is that old. But we need to Now, since this is just an ethnographic memory, since this is just an ethnographic memory about a place which is nearby Falgu River, which is one of the tributaries of Ganga, and that is why Ganga is also named Vishnupadi. So we need to connect all these dots. So how to connect these dots? What kind of a framework we require to do this? The other information comes at that at Nishada Hills, that is Brahma Parshva, Somashila, where the moon descends. That was the area where the Vishnupada Tirtha was there. And again, the story says that Takshak lived in that Nishad Hills. I think this Nishad Hill is now remembered as Vindhya, that emerged from Gaya side only, and then Vindhya Parvat starts till Madhya Pradesh and near Narmada. So the Takshak lived in that Nishad Hill and sent along with others to fight Prahlad. And there in the sun's chariot in the month of Shuchi. So again, Shuchi, Shukra, this is for used for summer seasons. So again, the summer comes in picture. Dakshinayan also had come in picture. So we understand that at one point of time, the Tropic of Cancer was passing through 24.7. But when and how to deduce this fact, which is showing that summer solstice was happening on that latitude, and from there the sun comes towards south. From there it courses towards south, towards equator. So these kind of memories are required to be understood and to be deciphered. So in the next episode, I will be taking how to deduce all these myths into a scientific itihasa, how to make it use as a chronological marker also in the ancient history of India. So that's all for today. Aditya.
Thank you so much, Rupaji. It's a great presentation you have shown. One of the points that I would like to add is that uh, even Bhagavad Gita mentions about Uttarayan also, about the
Ah,
Uttarayan and Dakshinayan. These topics are mentioned over there also, and what is the time of right passing of the yogi. So they calculate the Uttarayan time, and we also see Bhishma in Mahabharata also making those choices. So
yeah,
that is that knowledge was existing way before that.
way before that. And I would say it started, I could cite that portion where the Uttara and Dakshinayan word came into picture.
Yeah,
It was almost happening during 22 to 23,000 BCE. At
yeah,
that point of time, these words emerged
yeah.
with the help of armillary, which is produced in Surya Siddhanta itself.
And
So,
Valmiki Ramayana also mentions it.
so that is the later thing.
Correct.
Yeah, so Surya Siddhant has its memory of minus 27-degree Aries, that is 23,000 BC,
Mm.
23,000 to 24,000 BC. So the first introduction of these words, which came up in any Siddhantic text, must be that old. And frequently, then it started coming up till the Puranas and Itihasas also.
Yeah.
They have all Uttarayan and Dakshinayan words. They know the Gaya Tirtha. Sita knows Gaya Tirtha. She is there, and Dasharath comes in, and he says that give me the oblation, the Pitri oblations, and she has to. She was just playing with the sand of Falgu River, and then he says, I want to eat. So she creates the laddus of those sand, and with that she does the Pitra Tarpana. So after that, Rama and Lakshmana come after bathing, and they say that now they want to prepare all these things. Sita says he had already come and he has taken the food. So he said, "What food?" So shows that this kind of food she had to give him. because he came prematurely much before the time. And that time she curses because she wanted that the river, the Tulsi, and I think three of them she cursed. That is something very interesting ethnographic memory also, which we used to learn from our father, and they used to tell us as a stories to us. So something very interesting about Gaya Tirth is it has been there for a long time, and so much long that the place has not moved much. Must be only within the range of some kilometers because of the change of the river courses.
Yeah.
If you see
But
the
the
Talia
mountain,
channel,
yeah, but
yeah.
the
So
mountains have not changed.
not changed. So Nishad Hill is there, should be there, and we have lost that memory of Nishad Hill. So
Yes. So in my last book, I covered that Siddhashram area because that is the area of Siddhashram, and also the path is clear. Girivraj was even then there because the Shona Nadi
Shonan,
crosses right between and meets Ganga
Red
towards the
Pine,
northeast
Shonan.
in Bihar, and so that is still there. It's so rivers can always change, but mountains cannot change, and that is the
Mountains cannot.
basis.
Exactly. Ji.
So thank you so much, Rupaji. It's a really pleasure to see you again, and I look forward to the next concluding part of this
We'll
presentation.
conclude. Yeah, sure, sure.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
and namaste.